Welcome back to the 1211 podcast, where stories lead to victory and hope becomes contagious. I'm Jennifer, and this episode is one that will challenge you to live every day to the fullest. Today, I get the amazing privilege of sitting down with someone very close to my heart, my co host and my very dear friend, Tabitha. I'm so excited for you to hear her personal story of restoration, freedom, and how Jesus met her in the darkest season of her life. Tabitha, welcome to your own podcast.
Right.
Yeah, here we are. We've been looking forward to this conversation, and I know your story is going to bring hope to so many people.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm honestly so honored to share and humbled. If God can use my journey to encourage even one person, it's worth it. And I've said that for a very long time now. Revelation 12:11 is a powerful reminder that stories matter and that sharing our testimony is a huge part of our restoration and our own freedom.
Absolutely. And I can't wait for them to hear yours. But before we dive into the deep end of your restoration story, let's give our listeners a chance to get to know a little about who you are. You know the drill. We're going to play a quick round of rapid fire. I'll ask you a question, and then you'll answer with the first thing that comes to your mind. Don't overthink it. That's hard for you, I know. Don't overthink it.
I'm going to try.
Here we go. Are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Coffee or tea?
Tea.
And how do you like a certain kind of tea? Sweet tea, hot tea, cold tea? What kind of tea?
Well, it used to be sweet tea, and Red Lobster had the best.
Oh.
But now I have to have decaf tea, so it's usually hot tea now
Okay.
in the mornings with my honey.
Yeah, ooh, with honey. I'm not a tea drinker. I need to learn to be a tea drinker, I think. My daughter, very sophisticated that she is, loves to drink her tea. And
Yeah.
she makes me tea every once in a while. And it is good, but I haven't quite perfected that myself. Morning person or night owl?
Morning person, for sure.
What's your favorite worship song right now?
Oh, goodness. Honestly, I think The Truth by Megan Woods. I think it's Woods or
Yeah.
Wood.
Yeah, okay.
It's really good.
Yeah, there's so many good worship songs. I never can just pick one, but yeah, there's so many good ones. What's one word your friends would use to describe you?
Maybe an overthinker and I don't know.
Yeah.
Very serious. I don't know.
Yes.
We'll let my friends fill in the blank.
Friends, how would you describe her? Okay. Favorite book besides the Bible?
Besides the Bible, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of this, and I think my dad got it for me when I was a little girl. It was a book called Tabitha Tabby's Fantastic Flavor.
Oh.
And it is a book about these little cats. This little family of cats that run an ice cream shop, and I love ice cream, so I'm all about this little book.
Yes.
And the dad, and there's I think there's a brother. Like it just
Oh,
fits my
that's
family.
sweet.
So that's probably my favorite book outside of the
That
Bible.
makes me want to cry. So what's your go-to Bible verse when you need encouragement?
1 Peter 1:3, a living hope.
Yeah,
That's
very
just
good.
it.
That's who you are. That's you, right? Beach vacation or a mountain getaway?
Beach all the way.
Yeah. Any certain beach?
I love Destin.
Right.
I don't know why we got married there. Tyler and I
Well,
did.
that's why. It's like special to your family.
Absolutely. I just love the beach. Take me to the white sandy beaches.
Yeah,
and I'm
me
good.
too. Me too. One food that you could eat every day and never get tired of.
There's a lot. Chicken wings or Mexican, probably.
Oh, good. Yeah, I know you do eat a lot of chicken wings.
Yes.
Who's someone who inspires you in your walk with Jesus?
That's a good question because I feel like I have several people that inspire me. My grandmother, both of my grandmothers have. But I think like right now, honestly, I have a friend that walks this journey with me named Emily who lives in Nashville that has what I have. She inspires me. You inspire me in so many ways and have been so special in my life. My husband, my girl, I don't know. I feel like
Yeah.
everybody inspires me
Isn't
in some
it
way.
a blessing to be in a season of your life where you can't pick just one person?
Yeah, I can't.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. And thank you for saying that. But you inspire me, so it's
And
mutual.
my mom.
And it's
You know,
you're
there's
like
so
yeah,
many. Like I can't.
yeah. We're so. I think that when you have community like that, it's something that is truly, truly rare, and it's such a blessing. It's so good.
Yeah.
What's one piece of advice that you would give your younger self?
Be who God has made you to be and nothing else.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the culture pushes us toward telling us who we should be, and
Mm-hmm.
like this feeling of the pressure to be who somebody else thinks we should be or who someone else is instead of
Yeah.
just being who God created us to be.
Yeah.
When we get to that place, boy, there's some peace in that.
Yeah.
I love that part. That's always so much fun. Now that we've had a little lighthearted fun, we're going to jump into your beautiful story, and I can't wait for our listeners to hear this. So let's just start at the beginning. Tell us about what life looked like for you growing up as a child, teenager, young adult. Tell us a little bit about what that looked like.
Well, I grew up in a sweet little family here in Tullahoma. I've been here all my life. And I had two very, very, very hardworking parents as a little girl. I remember
Hmm.
that. Um, they both worked very hard to make sure I had all the things I needed and beyond. I remember my dad working multiple jobs as a little girl. And we lived right across the street from the church that we attended. And my mom always made sure I was at church every time the doors were open. And I didn't really question it. Like, I loved going to church. I was all about it. And I remember Miss Nellie Maddle. There were certain ones that I just remember when I was little, the
Hmm.
Zebics,
Hmm.
as I grew up, that just, I don't know, I just loved church. And at the time, I didn't realize why my mom always wanted me to be in church. And now that I'm grown and face life, I now see
Hmm.
why. So I, have that background of faith. I do, however, feel like when I was younger, I had in my mind if I went to church, I did what God wanted me to, life would always
Hmm.
be just right.
So, like a transactional kind of God, right? Where if
Yes.
I do this, he does that.
Yes. And
Yeah.
and he didn't
Yeah.
make me feel that way.
No,
That's
no,
just what
no.
the
It's
narrative I
learned
had written in my
behavior, or
head.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And um so I don't know. And I remember specifically when I was in middle school, there was another child that told me that I would. We were in chorus, and you know how girls can
Hmm.
be, and how middle school is, but it has stuck with me all these years because my family, my parents worked hard. Like
Hmm.
I wasn't the most privileged child, and I remember her telling me I would never amount to anything. I
Oh,
would never be any kind of a star or anything. So I carried that with me for a long
mm,
time and thought, well, I'm just going to keep doing what God wants me to do. I had some not so good boyfriends, middle
hmm.
school, high school, until I met, of course, Tyler, my husband. Met him, and I just knew right then he was my best friend.
Mm.
Like I wanted to be with him forever. I knew God made him for me and all those things. I don't know if he felt the same, but that's how I felt.
Yeah, that's
Um,
awesome.
so yeah, there's that. And then, he went to college, became an engineer. I pursued my dream of being an educator. I knew I wanted to be either a nurse or an educator. I wanted to help people.
Hmm.
I just loved education. I remember as a little girl having my expo marker writing on my Zenith TV. That was my whiteboard because
Yes,
that's all I
yes.
had. And playing teacher, so that's what I went and did. I started teaching in Coffee County. Loved everything about that. Loved my first principal, loved my mentors. It was a great experience. And then I had to leave after a year had already started. I got an opportunity to come to Tullahoma and teach at Robert E. Lee,
Right.
the school I had attended, the school I wanted my children to attend, and was so excited about coming here. We were ready to start our family. Not long after, we had my daughter Ellie, and I don't know, things seemed to be going great. We were attending church. We were serving in various capacities,
Yeah.
there, hosting small groups in our home,
Hmm.
everything, you know. For the
So,
most
so
part, things
life
were
was
great.
checking all the boxes for you,
It
right?
it
Yeah,
was, and
for the most part.
there were some road bumps, or yeah, bumps
Yeah,
in the road
yeah.
along the way with some things within some extended parts of my family with drugs and alcohol and things like that I saw, growing up. But I thought, but I'm over here with my
Right.
mom and
I'm
my
doing this other
dad.
thing.
Yeah, and we're
Yeah,
checking these boxes and
yeah,
everything's going to be okay for us.
yeah. So, talking about your foundation of faith, that, by the way, I'm going to stick this in here in this conversation. I hadn't planned for this, but
Mm.
here we are. Um, I think that something you said about the impact that it made on your life, that your mom always, that church
Mm.
was always a part of your story.
Yeah.
Um, I think there's this. Can you follow Christ and be a Christ follower and not be engaged in a church community? Absolutely. Yeah, there's people in remote places of the world where church isn't even an option for them, right? But they've
Right.
encountered Jesus. He's changed their life, and they're following him. But I think that something you said really resonates with me, of just the impact of being plugged into a community of faith and how that was so influential in your life and still is.
Yeah.
What would you say as a mom now,
Mm.
yourself, and that's a priority that you placed on your life? Like, what would you say you feel like is the importance of that for a family? Because one part of what I do, one of the hats that I wear is a children's pastor.
Mm.
And one of the things that's been on my heart in the last few months is some of the children that I serve
Mm.
are at really hard seasons in their life. Like, parents are going through divorces, and um, children are losing siblings, and um, maybe parents are critically ill, different things that they're going through. And what I have said is my prayer for those children is that during these seasons of their life, that the church will show up in a way that represents Jesus well,
Mm.
so that these kids understand that in a season where it would be really easy to run in a different direction, or for the other things to pull them in,
Mm.
the lack of hope to be what becomes their story, that instead that the church will show up in their lives in a way that they have no doubt that it is the safe place to be. It's the place where they feel calm and peace, and where they feel love like they feel nowhere else in their life.
Mm.
So speak to that as a parent, like, who experienced it for yourself, and then why that might be something that even now is a priority that you have in your family.
Goodness. There's lots of things there, but one thing I think about specifically just at the end of what you just said is, in my story, there is a time I couldn't go to church.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, if I could do anything in the world, if you had asked me what's one thing, if you could get up out of this bed and go do, I would want to go to church. And yes, we can go through life and not have Jesus. You most definitely can go through life without him and all those things. But man, you would be missing out. And I think about what he's done for me. I think about how the church has shown up no matter where we've attended. There have been people, how we've experienced heaven in and through those people, and how they've loved us well, and they have shown up. Whether it be meals, I remember Sarah Jordan, like, she would come over with my girls when I was sick, and she did sidewalk chalk and ate popsicles with them in the driveway.
Awesome.
And she didn't
Beautiful.
have to. And that in turn showed them that's a place where I can go and experience Jesus. But even in this difficult time, like, I can be loved and I can forget that hard for just a few minutes. I don't know. And I think there's a perfect fit. I
Yeah,
think
sure.
there are so many churches, there's so many places, but I think you have to be in church.
Yeah.
You have to have
You
that
need the community, right?
Yes.
We're not intended to walk this journey on our own. We can.
Yeah.
We can, but we're not intended to. God created us from the very beginning to be in relationship with him and in relationship with others,
Yeah.
which is hard. Relationships hard work, right?
Yeah.
And it's not always beautiful, and sometimes it's really messy. And church is messy at times, right? Relationships
Yes.
are messy, but it's what we're created for. And so I just think, just hearing you now in your adult life say how influential that was,
Mm-hmm.
and I would say the same thing. I look back and I'm so thankful that my mom did that for me. My
Yeah.
dad wasn't a believer for the first part of my childhood. He became a believer when I was a teenager, but I look back and I admire that my mom stayed the course through that, right? She
Mm-hmm.
kept us in church. She was there. We were involved. And those people are so impactful in my life. Like, they are the people who formed me
Yeah.
and helped me become God created me to be, right? Help me to see the potential in what God was calling me to do. So it's so beautiful. If someone were to have asked you during those, those years of your life, childhood, young adulthood, um, would they ask you the question, how's your relationship with God, or what's your relationship with God like? What would you have said?
I honestly probably then would have said, it's good.
Yeah.
I have a relationship with God. I know who He is.
Yeah.
I've been walking with Him. But now it is much different.
Yeah.
It's not just a surface level, it's good. I know Jesus. It is He is my lifeline.
Mm-hmm.
It's just different now. But then it would have been, yeah, I know Him. I go to church.
Yeah.
I serve. I this, I that.
I've checked the boxes. You
Yes.
wouldn't say that out loud, but
I've
really,
checked the
right? My
boxes.
relationship with God, it sounds like what I hear you saying is I've been there in that season of my life too, where uh, your relationship with God was really about, am I doing all the things?
Yes.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, do I believe in Him? Am I doing all the things? Not this intimate, deep, transformative type of work that's a moment by moment, day by day work, right, in your
Right.
life. So,
It's like having a foot in both places, like we've talked
yeah,
about. I've got to, yes, my foot's here,
yeah,
but it's also over here, and I'm
yeah.
pursuing all these
I'm
other
trying to walk
things.
two different paths,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, very hard. So
Yeah.
as you think about just your journey, one of the things I kind of think about in my own life, and as I hear stories of other people, which by the way is what I love to do. That's why I love this podcast, because nothing fills my heart quite like having someone trust me enough to share the deepest parts of their story.
Mhm.
So beautiful to me, and it's not something that's ever lost on me. And I often think when I hear someone's story, like every time I hear a different part of their story, a deeper part of their story, what I think to myself is, man, I thought I loved that person as much as I could.
Mm.
But when I hear their story, it just, what the Lord does in my life is just, He creates in me this just deeper sense of love for them. So, like, hearing
Mm.
their story is one of the ways that I feel like I just get to love them more deeply. So,
Yeah.
but as I think about people's stories and my own story and having the privilege of walking part of your journey with you, one of the things I think about is that I think for all of us, there's moments in our life, moments on the path that we're on of our journey, that are kind of mile markers, as of sorts, I guess is what I would say. But they're like these distinct moments. Henry Blackaby calls them like crisis of belief moments. But these moments where there's like a distinct mile marker, and it's a before and after moment is what I would call it. So, like for example, I would say for me, there's 3 or 4 of those big moments in my adult life where I trace it back and I think before blank and after blank, right? So
Yeah.
I gave you this example one time, like for me, my dad died 10 years ago in July. It'll be 10 years. And it's a distinct before and after moment for me. It's before my dad passed, life looked this way.
Mm-hmm.
After my dad passed, life has never looked quite like that before. So it's this new normal, and what does life look like? So as you think about your journey and those before and after moments, um, will you take us back to some of those moments, those before and after, or maybe even the most crucial one in your journey, if that's where you want to land? Those moments that, because I think those moments either they kind of turn our world upside down, and I think they turn our world upside down to then bring it right side up again, but in the right way.
Yeah.
But they turn our world upside down, and they really do challenge us to the core, because all of the things that we once knew to be true or were foundational for us sometimes have like just been stripped away.
Yeah.
So kind of share with us that moment or those moments for you and that were impactful.
One that just came to mind, that I feel like I share quite often with people that I didn't think about, was so instrumental, but it is. I think back to my mom's brother was an alcoholic, and he ended up with cirrhosis of the liver. And at the end of his life, I will never forget, he was on the floor of my grandmother's living room, and he was just crying out for Jesus to forgive him. Please take the pain away. I'm so sorry. And I remember being a young woman sitting there watching this and just thought, he's at the end of his life. And it made me think, like, it gave me a visual of Jesus on the cross with the sinner next to him. There's no time for my uncle to sit with a pastor and get saved and let's get baptized and all these things. But he's asking for God's forgiveness right there. And I think in that moment, the Lord started planting seeds and shifting me right there. I just didn't know it, that this isn't just about check boxes, because when you get to the very end, all you have left is him, and all you can do is call out to him, and it doesn't have to look a certain way. I don't know. It just started to change my perspective. And I had an aunt who was a drug addict and schizophrenic bipolar, and that was very impactful for me. And watching, because in my mind I thought, if I stay away from those things, I won't ever have to experience what they've experienced. And I was wrong. I wasn't immune to those things and following God and checking those boxes.
Yeah,
and,
you weren't immune to suffering, right?
Right.
But that's kind of like when you go back to talking about that you didn't intentionally have a view of God that was like it was a transactional God.
Yeah.
But a lot of us do. We think if we do all the right things, then everything turns out right.
Yes.
Right? If we check all the right boxes, then all those good things are going to be what we experience. But that's not reality. That's not life. I mean, Scripture talks about that it rains on the righteous and the unrighteous, right?
Yes.
And we all suffer, and that's not like I was just talking about Job this week to the kids at Kids Church, and like Job did no wrong.
Right.
Job did it all right. He was righteous in God's sight, and yet he suffered greatly, right?
Yeah.
So but I think sometimes, and I don't think that that view that you had is abnormal. I think it's very typical of people that they think it's almost like if I do enough, if I do enough right, if I give myself away, all these things, I give myself away to the right things, and I'm a good person, right?
Yeah.
Then that kind of protects me from all these hard things, and not so much.
And a false sense of reality that if I choose Jesus, I'm immune from to hardship and suffering and all those things. Like, it's almost like a get out of hell free card. Like, here's Jesus. I don't have to pick up my cross and follow exactly like he did. He'll take care of me. And I think that's why some people get so frustrated with Christianity in general, or giving their life to the Lord, because it's like, if I'm still going to suffer, then why am I going to do all this good? I'm just going to live my life to the fullest and chase my dreams and all those things. And
then that's in itself is a facade, because there is no way to live your life to the fullest apart from the one who created you being a part of your life, right?
Right.
Yeah, so it's this, we get caught in these vicious, like hamster wheel cycles that are just pulling us farther and farther away. So, sorry, keep going.
No, it's okay. Like, but I think obviously the most impactful, my life continued to change as I saw and, started making connections between the Bible and what was happening in life and the things around me. But then when I got sick, I was diagnosed with this disease that was very rare and all these things. And
stop right there for just a second. What was it like leading up to that? Because how long was this? There was a journey getting to a diagnosis, right?
Yeah.
And like I never had really thought about it until I heard you share your story recently. And then even as I'm thinking about this podcast, there was kind of a sifting, I don't even know how to say it, but it was just kind of like when you're sifting flour and it's just sifting away, slipping, I guess, away little by little. And I know that leading up to that diagnosis, it wasn't like one day life was easy and smooth, and then the next day there's a diagnosis. There was a journey even through that sickness to get to the diagnosis, right? There was like this sifting of, like you said, this little by little.
Yes.
Kinda.
Well, in 2015, I had our second daughter, Emmeline, and the pregnancy wasn't the easiest. And once I had her, I hemorrhaged right after delivery. They said everything was fine. We thought everything was fine. Went on with life. In 2017, my husband was working at Nissan in Smyrna, and driving back and forth. And I didn't realize we all think we're consumed with ourselves and just know what's going on, like with us, that even like our spouse is going through something that we don't even know that they're going
Sure,
through
yeah.
sometimes. And he was praying on his way to work and back and forth because that's an hour drive. And he did not tell me this till way later. But in 2017, he prayed for God to break his heart for what broke his. And it's like the wheels fell off, I think, there.
I've once said that in a Bible study. I remember the room I was sitting in, the group of women I was teaching at the time, and I said, "Don't pray the prayer, break my heart for what breaks yours, unless you're willing for him to do whatever that is, because it will be earth shattering, right?"
Absolutely.
So when I hear you say that the wheels fell off, I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's the thing I warned you about." Yeah.
Yes. And if you pray that,
Yes.
he will deliver, I
Right,
promise.
yeah.
And not in a bad way.
No, no. The breaking is hard, but it ends up being a beautiful thing, right? But the
Yes.
breaking's not easy.
No, it's not. And I started experiencing really, really bad symptoms. In the middle of the night, I would wake gasping for air because I'd pretty much stopped breathing. And my heart rate was getting upwards 200 plus beats per minute. I remember being home on a spring break with my girls, and I was making our favorite Totino's pizza lunch, and we're playing a little game of chase just around the house. I wasn't running hard at all. Next thing I know, I am passed out on the couch, and they were little, and we were home alone. And I had, right before I passed out, because the sound and everything was starting to go, I was able to press my mom's phone number. Ellie was in kindergarten. So she was 5 or 6, and Emmy was 3 or 4. And Ellie was able to get the garage door open to get my mom in. And my mom begged me to go to the hospital. And I was like, no, they're going to tell me it's nothing and all those things. And had been going to the doctors, especially after that. You're a young woman, childbearing age, you're fine. This is normal. And I'm thinking, this doesn't seem normal, but sure, we'll go with it. And
You're the expert.
Yeah, you're the expert. I have no idea what I'm talking about. So that happened. There was a period where I was out of work for 2 weeks. Tyler had taken me to the ER here. He'd taken me to Nashville. They kept telling me it was migraines, but I could not, for 2 weeks, I couldn't get out of bed. I felt my head killed me. My body hurt. I was constantly dizzy. I was nauseous. He was having to bathe me for those 2 weeks. He was having to feed me. Our moms were having to help him while he was getting to work, get our kids. I literally couldn't get out of bed and do anything by myself. And so this is not right. Kept pursuing doctors. And it was almost to the point where Tyler was not believing me, and it was causing an issue in our marriage. And I remember one of the cardiologists, she told me basically in so many words, I was a hypochondriac. And
Goodness.
Tyler felt the same. And so when I would start having these moments where I was having these crazy heart palpitations, I couldn't breathe, I was about to pass out and all these things, he would tell me, I'm going to need you to calm down, because they had him thinking it was anxiety.
And you're thinking, if it were only that easy.
Right. And
Don't you wish I could calm down, is what my
Right.
daughter says every time she talks about somebody that's dealing with like anxiety or whatever. She's like,
Yes.
when people say, just calm down, she goes, don't you know they want to scream out, don't you wish I could calm down?
Yes.
You know, yeah.
I wanted to pinch his head off.
Yes, yes.
And if I could have controlled it, I would.
Sure, yes.
So anyways, having all these, it was rough. It was really, really rough. And to the point where I just wanted to give up. And my friends, they didn't understand. I never wanted to go do anything.
Right.
I couldn't relate to them. They were at a different spot in life. They were enjoying things that I didn't really want to enjoy anyways. And that just, it made me even more different than I already was.
Sure.
And isolated me. I didn't know who I was, didn't know who my friends were. It was very difficult. And so there was sifting going on.
Yeah.
And 2019-ish, maybe it was even 2018. No, I think it was 2019. I finally decided to go to one of my friends who was a physician. I did not want to go see her because I had this, I know it was the enemy now. She's going to think I'm crazy just like
Sure.
everybody
Yeah.
else. I don't want her to think this about me. Yada, yada, yada.
Which,
Oh,
by the way, people who have never experienced like chronic pain or chronic illness, like autoimmune type diseases, things like you're talking about,
mm-hmm.
um, it's so easy for them to be judgmental and critical of others. And that's one of the things I want to insert here is like you were feeling that, right? You were feeling like,
Yeah.
and I think if you've gone that journey at all, there's a moment where you think, I am crazy. Like, people,
Yeah.
yeah, they're right. I am crazy. And so then it's like you retreat and you just wish someone else understood. And so then, because especially when medical people can't help you, you're
Yeah.
like, okay, so am I imagining this? I don't want to imagine this. Like, what's going on? And I think
Yes.
that it is a journey, and that if you've never experienced it, I would just say, guard your criticism, guard your
Yeah.
judgment.
Because
Because
everyone has an opinion
yes,
how they would handle
yes,
it.
absolutely.
They really have no idea.
Yeah, no, mm-mm.
Because I had no idea.
Sure,
I would
yeah,
have had an opinion before I walked this.
absolutely. So you go to your friend.
So I go to my friend, and same thing. Nothing's showing up. Everything looks fine. But she decided to do a heart monitor for 2 weeks. That's when we found out just how bad my heart rate, like in the middle of the night, like I would just be sleeping and it's going bonkers. So she sends me to Nashville to a cardiologist. Nothing. Just still nothing. I finally go to the cardiologist that had treated my dad and my grandfather, and I was like, look, something is not right. I'm not going to live to watch my children grow up if you don't do something. I know I'm not.
Desperation, yeah.
And so one day, by the grace of God, now that I know it was him, something abnormal came up on my echocardiogram, which led to a series of events, which led to a right heart catheterization in December 2019. And he told me there were a couple of possibilities of what it could be. One of them, he told me it could be a shunt in my heart, which could be easily fixed, which is a hole, basically. Right. And the other one was something else that he didn't even tell me what it was, didn't tell us anything about it. I'm certain it's not that. Well, after
Except that it was, right?
Yeah, after the procedure, cardiologist comes in. He has tears, and he puts his hand on Tyler's shoulder, and he said, "I'm so sorry." He said, it was the other thing. And he told us it was pulmonary hypertension at the time. So he had friends in Nashville that he wanted to get me into, but he couldn't get me into them, so he sent me somewhere else. Sorry. So I went to this pulmonologist, and the things you have to go through to get diagnosed is insane for this disease. There's things called PFTs, pulmonary function tests. There are scans. It's insane. I can't even begin to describe how many. Every week I was doing something. And when he sat down with me and my husband, he said, "I'm just gonna shoot you straight," because when I walked in, he was like, "You don't look sick." He said, "But these tests confirm you are very sick. You are in right heart failure, and you have 2 to 5 years to live if we do not find appropriate treatment for you. And you need to go ahead and start getting your end of life things ready. You need to know who your children are going to go to in the event that something happens to both of you, all kinds of things." So needless to say, that drive home, we didn't speak. There was nothing to say. And I remember right after that, we just laid in bed and cried, reminiscing the past, don't really understand right now, and don't see a future. And so that led to, just pretty much giving up. He had given me a treatment because we had to do something immediately. And he put me on this medicine, and it made me feel worse. One morning I woke up and my systemic blood pressure was 60/30. I don't know. It was something like dangerously low. So I could not keep taking that medicine. And COVID is coming about. This is
Sure.
2020, spring
Right.
2020. And so I have this lung disease, no cure, no treatment. I cannot get COVID. They said you can't,
Right.
you,
Yeah.
you, you can't go anywhere. Your
Sure.
family needs to wear a mask. They need to sanitize. You need to wipe your groceries down, the whole 9 yards. And my husband does not handle those kinds of things well. He is an extrovert on steroids,
Mm-hmm.
and it was hard. It
Mm-hmm.
was my husband describes it best. It was like we had been tied up and put in a corner with
Mm-hmm.
our greatest fears all the way around.
Yes.
And so something told me I needed, and now I know it was the Lord, you need to get a second opinion. You need to get a second opinion. So I went to the original pulmonologist that my cardiologist wanted me to get into. And long story short, she did more testing and did something called a vasodilator test. I responded really well. And so she got me started on the simple med of amlodipine
Mm-hmm.
that I know a lot of people take. And it is by the grace of God we started to see some improvements.
Sure.
Yeah. And I remember the nurse telling me, we are going to do everything we can. We want you to see your children grow up and those kinds of things. So that fall of 2020, things started getting bad again. Or actually, I think that's when I had another right heart cath. Things were looking good. And I started having trouble again. So we ended up on this venture to Mayo Clinic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but
It's okay.
we went to Mayo Clinic and I was diagnosed with a bazillion other things.
Yeah.
And I think it was all caused from
Sure.
this another diagnosis of not just pulmonary hypertension, pulmonary arterial hypertension, where these arteries in my lungs are basically stiffening, hardening, dying. It is not like your normal systemic pulmonary hypertension, just high blood pressure, which most people think they are the same. They're not. And so then I'm diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis, Raynaud's, autonomic dysfunction, iron deficiency, and you name it. I feel like I had it. And then other autonomic issues that they couldn't even identify at the time because my eyes were swelling, my skin's crumbling, my hair's falling out, my fingers are splitting. It was bad. So anyways, yeah, so there's that. I want to wait and see if there's anything else.
I want to go back for just a 2nd and ask you the question about, so this diagnosis comes, and then, like I said, it wasn't a diagnosis, it was a journey of diagnosis, right? Trying to get to the bottom of all these things, and it's like one layer of the onion gets peeled back and another layer, but so early on you talked about you just laid in bed and cried and you didn't really know what to say, but how did you wrestle with God during those first few days and those weeks and maybe even months after that diagnosis? You've had this idea of, God, I've done it all right. I've done everything I'm supposed to do. So how did you wrestle with God during that time?
I was angry, very angry. And I thought, like what you just said, I did all the things you asked. And here I am with this disease. I'm not even going to live as long as my uncle who chose alcoholism.
Sure.
Not that that sounds terrible.
Right.
But I did all the right things.
Yes, right.
And I still have this. And you're going to take my life from me.
So talk a little bit about the darkness of that season and the way that Jesus, I know that you've shared this with me and I want you to share this with the listeners, that there was a point though during this journey where something changed and there was a shift from that anger and that hopelessness to how Jesus met you in that season and in a very intimate and personal way.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of moments. Specifically, there's two. But the first one, when I had, honestly, it's been almost 5 years exactly, March 19th of 2020, I had my greatest emergency, and Tyler had to get me to the hospital. My girls, like, he's dressing me, and it's just my girls. We had to leave them here till we could get a parent here. Rush me to the hospital. I end up in Nashville, and I don't think I'm going home.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'm going to see them ever again. The hospital was like a deserted island. There's nobody in there. Nobody's allowed in there. They wouldn't let Tyler in with me. And I'm getting ready to go for a procedure that I wasn't even supposed, I was scheduled to have, but wasn't going to have because of COVID.
Right.
By the grace of God, I was worked in. And I was sitting there right before the procedure, and there were these curtains. And you do not get meds, pain meds or anything like that before you go into this procedure, because they need to have accurate measurements of blood flow and all those things. So I'm sitting there, and there's like this pattern in the curtain, and it takes me back to my childhood. The same room I'm standing in with my uncle, and there's a picture of Jesus on the wall, and he's wearing the crown of thorns. And I just remember thinking, I don't have Tyler. I don't have my girls. I don't know if I'm going to see them ever again. I don't have my mom or my dad. I don't have anybody. And you've left me here all alone, God. But you're reminding me Jesus is with me.
Right. Yeah.
And that was a pivotal moment. But it wasn't like a light switch.
Sure.
A little while later, I just thought, I'm going to die. There's no sense in trying to find this treatment that's never going to come. Nothing's ever going to be better. My girls are watching their mom die. My husband's watching his wife die. We feel like we're not perfect, righteous people by any means. But we feel like Job. Like, I have all these diagnoses, like, life is not worth living.
One thing after the other being yanked away, kind of, yeah.
And I remember sitting in the floor of my closet, and I don't want to go into great detail because I don't know of all the little listeners, but I wanted life to stop right there.
Yeah.
And I prayed for God to give me peace to be able for life to stop right there.
Yeah.
And I just sat there praying that. And in that moment, I heard, Mom, Mom. And it was like, right then, the Lord told me, you have a choice to make. You can keep living as a victim to all of this, or you can pick up your cross and you can follow me and you can trust me. And if you die, that's okay.
Yeah.
If you live, that's okay. And it was in that moment, and I will believe this for the rest of my life. My girls' middle names, I know they were named that for a specific reason. Elizabeth Grace, because Ellie has shown me the grace of God so much. Even in walking up the stairs when she would say, Mommy, I know you have to stop right here. I'll wait on you. God was waiting on me and giving me time. And then I think about Emmeline Faith. And she is the one who hollered out to me when I was in the floor of that closet. And I needed to have faith.
Yeah, absolutely. So thinking about those turning points in your journey, kind of, when we think about the before and after the diagnosis, what would you say were some of your hopes and dreams before the diagnosis? And then maybe, or even like, what were some of the things you were holding on to or chasing after before the diagnosis, and how that's changed since then?
I think before the diagnosis, I wanted to be a successful educator. I wanted to be successful in the eyes of the world. I was holding on to this perfection and this checkbox, and Honestly, I don't even know. It's hard for me to even get back to that
Sure.
headspace a lot of
Yeah.
times. But I wasn't chasing Jesus
Mm. Mm.
and what he wanted me to be. I was chasing Tabitha and the world's desires and dreams and those
Sure.
kinds of things.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. So if someone, well, actually, let me ask one more question before I ask this question.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how would you describe what the restoration process, God's restoration in your life, and the freedom that you experience now? What did that look like? Restoration and freedom, learning to be restored, learning to walk in true freedom, in spite of the fact that
Mm.
the diagnosis is not gone, right? The
Right,
treatment's working right now, but like He hasn't miraculously healed you yet of
right.
that. It's still a part of your journey. It's a reality of there's times you're short of breath, there's times that you're hurting and you're in pain and the energy's not there. But like, what has restoration and freedom looked like as you've walked this out?
I think the main thing that has, like, God has shown me that I can trust him. And I think he has restored me by making me completely dependent on him.
Yeah.
And I almost feel a sense of great sadness for, this sounds bad. I don't want anybody to suffer.
Right.
This great sadness for people who don't. And if I had never experienced this, I feel sad that they don't get an opportunity to experience that. And just how on the days where I didn't think the breath would come, how he did,
Yeah.
like he was the air I was breathing.
Sure.
When my heartbeat would not calm itself, like it was almost as if I could feel him just reach inside me and touch my heart and slow it down. And beyond that, it was a peace that surpassed all understanding, that instead of getting freaked out and, oh my gosh, I'm about to die, it was, okay, Lord, I'm going to sit and wait. And
Right.
if you calm it, fine. And if you don't, I guess I'm going to see you in just
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah.
And just restored me in that way, that death did not look the same to me anymore. Instead of death being so awful and the end and all those things, it was like, I could trust you. I can trust Jesus because he's going to meet me there. He's met me here. He's going to meet me there. He loves my family more than I could ever love my family. And I don't know, everything just shifted and everything changed. My whole perspective on life.
Yeah. And on death, right?
Yeah.
So if someone's listening today to the podcast who feels like they're in that dark, hopeless place, what would you want to say to them?
First of all, I would say be vulnerable and speak out to the Lord and tell him exactly how you feel, because he already knows.
Right.
Just like any parent, they know how their children are feeling. They just want to hear them say it. They already know. Tell him. And then I think I would say, because it's hard, because we live in this world where everything needs to be tangible. We have to see it to believe it. We have to hear it for our own whatever. But I think that's why he gives us scripture. We have to read it. We have to believe it. Voice it and just trust him.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, because I feel like everybody's journey is different.
Sure.
But I would say be real with him and tell him.
Yeah. Very good. So what are some of the things in your life right now that sustains you and continues to propel you forward in your journey with Jesus?
I think there's many things, but I think staying in his word.
Yeah.
I think worshiping and praising when I feel like I can't, and just making myself do it, almost making yourself go through those motions.
Sure.
Because there's something about, even when you practice it over time, God uses that to shift your heart posture.
Right.
And uses that in that way. And I think also community.
Yeah.
I think God has led us to a place Um, he's always provided, but I think just having a community and those people that will point you back to Jesus and remind you where you've been and the
Hmm.
goodness that you've experienced.
Yeah, we talked about this at the beginning, and I'll say it here again as we close up, that as we wrap up, you cannot underestimate the weight and the importance of the community that you surround yourself with.
Absolutely.
Um, we need people in our lives who speak into us what we cannot believe ourselves. We need people who aren't just there for the high moments, they're there in the valleys and the trenches, but that are willing to walk every part of our journey with us, to say the hard things to us, to have hard conversations with us, sometimes to sit with us and say nothing.
Yeah.
It's the people that you're surrounding yourself with, your children with. Uh, in my opinion, the course of our life is very much affected by the people we surround ourselves with. So I think if, when we're in, especially when you're in the darkest places, making sure you have the right people around you and people that are calling you into deeper places and not giving up on you, so important.
Yeah.
Um, so if they were to walk away today with one truth about God and who He is, what would you want them to know?
He is your living hope
Yeah.
at the end of everything. At the end of absolutely everything. I think about, like I said, my uncle sitting there calling out to him, and his situation was different from mine. His circumstances were different. I look at mine, like, yeah,
Yeah,
he's it. That's it.
absolutely. Yeah. So we're going to wrap things up. Thank you for sharing your heart today, Tabitha. Your story is such a testimony of God's goodness and His faithfulness, and that He is those things even in the hardest places of our life, the hardest spaces, the darkest times. And I want to say thank you for the way you live. I'm going to have a hard time not being emotional. Sorry. Thank you for the way you live every day. Our world is truly a better place because of you, and I see firsthand how your story impacts people day in and day out. And truly, I'm thankful that now your story is out there for an even broader audience to hear. More than anything, I'm thankful to have a front row seat to the beautiful story that God is continuing to write for you and your family.
Thank you for letting me share it. And thank you to everyone listening. I want you to know there is hope and there is freedom. Keep going and don't give up. He is good. And he isn't finished because I'm doing things now I never would have dreamt I would do.
Yeah, God's not ever finished with us, right? Aren't we thankful? And to you, our listeners, we are truly honored that you joined us today. I'm certain that Tabitha's story resonated with your spirit, and I pray that it truly encouraged your heart. Make sure to join us back here next week when we'll sit down for a powerful conversation of courage, obedience, deep pain, and radical surrender.
That's a wrap for today's episode of the 1211 podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, leave a rating, and share this episode with someone who needs a little extra hope today. My prayer is that God has been honored and that the pain and suffering will not be wasted.
Thanks for being a part of the 1211 podcast, where real people share real stories of real freedom. Until next time, remember, your story isn't over either. Even on the hardest days, God loves you, He sees you, He hears you, and He's working even when you cannot see it. Lean into His grace. He is more than enough. Blessings, friends.